Welcome to this edition of Workplace Culture Wisdom, a conversation series with experienced leaders. I'm Kathy Jourdain, and I'm here with Robert Patzelt, welcoming him to the Workplace Culture Wisdom conversation series with experienced leaders. And Robert is an executive and former business lawyer with over 35 years experience in organizational leadership, operations, mergers, acquisitions, and business development. And I've asked him to speak about both the wisdom of conflict in workplace team or board culture and the power of questions in ensuring decisions are forward-thinking and ethically grounded. And there are many organizations and leaders who shy away from conflict because we have this impression that it's not healthy. So we're going to challenge that notion. Robert, welcome.
Pleased to be here.
I want to just ask you generally, what are your thoughts about conflict in the workplace?
It's interesting that, we're having this discussion because we seem to have a complete sort of absorption about the concept that conflict is bad.
Right.
And I have a problem with that whole concept myself. I mean, it's interesting as Canadians, we'll accept a 1% of the people get into the NHL. So we have a 99% failure rate. I snowboard, right? I'm 66 years old and I snowboard, and people go, well, why would you do that? Why would you take those risks? And yet we don't take these risks in the workplace. And I find that odd because it is built into the systems that there will be conflict. The issue is whether or not it's a positive experience or a negative one. And it's mostly about how we deal with conflict.
Do you have a story of conflict that led to great results?
So this one is actually personal in the sense that I was involved, like many of us are, in a national organization, right? And Canada is held together like the provinces and the federation, everything else. National organizations have the same challenges, as it were.
Right.
In this situation, it was a national professional organization. There was a large group within it that felt that they weren't getting their share of the revenue, as it were. There were turf issues, and I had already served as chair of that subgroup, but I'd also been on the national executive of the larger entity, and was its national treasurer. At some point, there was a group that took over, and they were monocular in their view. I mean, it was all about the money. It was all about, different things. And they were going back and forth, not dissimilar to the situation we're having right now in the world and in our own country. And it got personalized, and it got to be singularly focused about certain things. And as a result, they were negotiating back and forth. Then it started to get into bad faith, if you want to call it that. They brought in an independent arbitrator, or mediator to try and solve the problem. At the end of the day, that whole board and the executive got fired.
Wow.
I was brought back in to chair it again. Interestingly enough, they parachuted in a brand new executive director who I had no involvement in hiring and didn't know her. We had 6 weeks to put on our largest fundraising conference, right, at the time, put in a new business plan. I brought half the board back together, put in some new players, and we were successful. And when you think about it, it's a giant experiment. It's a perfect lab, because the only thing that had changed was a dozen players, not even a dozen, right? So what had changed? Well, leadership obviously changed, but how we focused on what the issue was. So it became task-oriented or problem-oriented, not personality-oriented, relationship-oriented. And people could see the vision of what needed to be accomplished. You didn't have the time to create structure, rules, everything. They shared in what needed to be done and got to.
And do you have specific strategies or practices that you use to be able to keep people task-oriented rather than personality-oriented?
So there are a lot of techniques. I mean, I think the first thing is that you have to create an environment where people are allowed to speak their voice, right? So and when I'm chair of the board, I try very hard, and it's hard for me. Trust me, it's very, very hard for me to speak last. Sometimes I'll go around the room from left to right, sometimes right to left. Sometimes I'll ask a director to forward a position, even though it's not her own, right?
Mm,
To say, I want you to put it on the table. And
mm,
because you're playing the devil's advocate, as it were, you get it out there. But essentially, you're creating a safe space that you're allowed to speak up. In fact, you're encouraging constructive dissent, right?
mm.
And when I teach the director's education program for the ICD, I mean, I have a slide from Steve Jobs that says, if you want to make everyone happy, sell ice cream, right? And I mean, and I have another slide, which is me in my snowboarding outfit doing a snow angel in a driveway because my partner, who I frequently go to the hill with, he bailed on me at the last minute, and I'm already geared up. And so I did this protest snow angel in the driveway and took a photograph of it. Well, and again, it's a slide I put up saying that you can disagree without being disagreeable, right? So you have to create, that environment of being allowed to speak up. In fact, people should go into a meeting or a consultation or a one-on-one or whatever, expecting that kind of openness, that kind of trust, that
Mm.
that expectation of constructive dissent, if you want to call it that. If you think about it, as humans, we are prediction machines, right? And it's an accumulation of all of our experiences, prejudices, education, training, everything that goes right or wrong, right? And our brain says, okay, what's going to be the outcome of something that's about to happen, right? And that's, when you set up the situation where their prediction machine says, man, we got something tough here, but I'm
Mm.
expecting it to be tough. Actually, you come away from some of these meetings actually invigorated, right? I mean, because you're going, wow, like we really put an edge on that problem. Like we really solved it, which is another one of the slides I have, from
Mhm.
Leonard Cohen saying there's cracks in everything. That's how the light gets in. So we give ourselves permission to go for cracks. So technique is red team, blue team. And again, what you're doing is blue team designs an idea, a concept, pitches it, and red team's job is to blow it up, right?
Ah,
Is to say to find the cracks in it. So again, you've
right.
depersonalized it. The problem is the issue here, right?
I love that. I love the idea of red team, blue team, and also this notion of predictability or prediction machines. With the work that we do with healthy workplace cultures, we talk a lot about the neuroscience and the behavioral science behind how people respond and interact with each other. And it's true that the role of the brain is to keep us safe, and it's best able to perform that role when it can predict things. So I love the idea that you're saying deliberately set up the circumstance or the conditions so that people can predict that they're going to have these, I call them animated conversations, when they're in these in the conversations or in the situation. So I like that idea of red team, blue team.
I mean, that's one method. I mean, I love, like, have you ever been to the airport and the flight's canceled?
Yes.
And I mean, and chaos ensues and people freak out. I mean, it's fascinating to watch what's happened. But if you look at it, think of it of the user experience, they are stressed because they don't know what the next step is. The minute someone says to them, "We booked you on the next flight,"
Mhm.
right? You're unhappy, but your
Right.
level comes down. And your interpersonal play is very important here because you think about it, when I was a poor student and I had no money and they're going to say you're on tomorrow's flight, and I'm going, I barely have enough to eat at an airport, let alone find a hotel room or whatever that goes with it. So your stress level, your interpersonal reaction into the problem, right? So when people are freaking out, a whisper from someone else sounds like a shout to them. The devil's advocate's a great one too, right? I mean, and the genesis of this I love because, of course, it comes from the Catholic Church in the sense that when they were going to give someone sainthood, they actually hired a lawyer. It was a lawyer, and everyone knows I'm a lawyer, or I was a lawyer. The lawyer's job he in that case would be the devil's advocate. His job was to find everything wrong about this person
uh,
to make sure that they were appropriately giving someone sainthood,
mm,
right? So when you create that
fascinating.
devil's advocate environment, I mean, you're that person is told to wear the black hat, right?
Right,
And that's
right,
a good thing. I mean, it's a defusing tool. So, it's
right.
again bringing the pressure cooker down. So, there's all these different kinds of techniques you could use. I mean, humor in the boardroom and in the workplace is important too. When you have that self-deprecating way or that sense of humor, you can all of a sudden everyone just laughs and goes, okay, we're getting our too serious here, right? Like, I mean, smarten up. So, I mean, there's a role that people play. And in the management, in the workplace, managers are critical in this because they're
Mm,
the ones that control the kitchen, as it were, right? And you think of, when they're arbitrary in providing raises or assigning work. I mean, I read somewhere there's something like 85% of employees are carrying around one conflict in their head.
ah,
Well,
interesting.
it's a staggering number if that's true,
Huh,
right? And I mean, and 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 especially if it's personal, it's unresolved. I
right.
mean, that's the boil that festers, right?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And there's so much power in being able to give voice to that. One of the things when you mentioned the devil's advocate, I'm remembering that we talked a little bit about questions, and I just wonder if you could speak a bit to the role of questions in ensuring that you're making sound decisions and sound and ethical decisions focused on the future.
Yeah, so I mean, there's two aspects of it. One is the question itself and what you're trying to get at, right?
Hmm.
And then how you say it, right?
Right.
And it's the second one that probably puts people over the edge, right? Because again, I sit on a board where I have, very, very dear friend, and she can get away with saying in a meeting, Robert, that is by far one of your dumbest ideas ever. And everyone around will laugh, and then I'll go, why? Why'd you say that? And she goes, this. And I go, yeah, I never thought of that. There's a blind spot there. Or I'm going to explain why. But the proper way to say that is, and I'll use, I grew up in the country, right? So, I mean, I've been living in a big city for 40 years. So I mean, I shouldn't, I probably lost my citizenship or passport to the country. But having said that, what I frequently do is say, I'm just a poor country boy. Can you explain to me how you got to that assumption or that
Right.
conclusion, right? And so that's not me saying, I think your idea is dumb. I'm saying, as it relates to this problem, how did you get there? And I go, well, here's the assumption we made. And I go, yeah, I agree with that. Now, or I don't agree with it for whatever reason, right? But it's those kinds of techniques where you have probing questions, again, about the problem and you're depersonalizing it, right?
The other thing that occurs to me in how you're describing this woman and how she was offering you a comment is it's also in your response to that, right? Like you're modeling that this actually isn't really a big deal, that this interaction is going on. And now you want to be curious about why she's offering you the feedback that she is, no matter how that was. So that sets a tone for how people show up.
Yeah, I mean, and again, how you go into a meeting. And you got to remember, we all have good and bad days, right? And I mean, there will be times where, I catch myself, but others will sit there and go, today is not the day to poke the bear. And they go, what? Something's eating at Robert, right? And you're going to set him off, right?
Mm.
Now, I mean, I have a wicked temper, but I'm quick to calm down too. So, I mean, that's, it's one of those things. That's what a good manager does. That's what a good chair does is they, they move the conversation when it starts to get disrespectful, gossipy, blaming, right? They move it away. They change the tone of it, the tenor of it. I mean, but again, it's your job, especially as a director, to adjust your tone and adjust the questioning. I mean, I love, I don't some people don't like using military examples, but if you think of JTF-2 in Canada, SEAL Team 6, I mean, these people live in a pressure cooker. I mean, they are in life and death situations. Trust is absolutely critical. But one of the things that they all do, that they all have in common, SAS, all of them, right? And good boards as well, and good management teams, is they have an after action review. And they go like, what just happened here? How did we feel? What did we learn from this experience, right? And they will take persons who aren't the best, but who have the highest degree of reliability and trust.
Right.
And so
Right.
back to workplace culture and safety and healthiness, it all comes back to trust, right? Communication and trust.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds so ridiculously simple, but it's not.
I would say the things that we can do are actually very simple, and yet we have to be very intentional about them to be able to make them work.
Yeah.
Do you have any final things that you would like to say about either conflict or questions or healthy workplace culture?
I'll go back to the beginning that conflict is normal, right? I love to cook, right? And you can see from my shape that I enjoy to eat as well. And I view conflict more like contrast in food, if you think of that, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, salted caramel, right? That's a good conflict,
That's
right?
true.
Chocolate and garlic or fish and vanilla, bad conflict, right? Contrast is not a bad thing, right? And contrast, I mean, if I want to call it positive conflict, I mean that salty and sweet, the umami, all of those different things. It's the same thing in a boardroom, in a workplace, everything else. You want that diversity. You want that contrast in there. You need it to speak up. Too much salt is bad. Too much sugar is bad. I mean, you need it all in there. When you get that kind of balance, you get a really, really nice experience. There's a magic there. And when you create that in a team, when you create that in an environment, when you put that all together, then you're defining the problems better. You're coming up with better solutions. You're heading things off before they're even a big problem. Or when you see them, you say, you know what? We got to talk about this. The elephant in the room, when we say we have to deal with this now because it's going to get out of control, right? So, I mean, I think we just have to accept that it's real, right? And I mean, that's why I like tech teams, right? When they're doing software planning, like they're focused on the user experience, and you've got all these different coders and people, and I don't understand what they do, but I mean, but the thing is, they come together and they argue and they go back and forth, and then they write something and they go, that's really cool. The gratitude is there. They have the debriefing that's there. They argue with respect, right? I mean, if someone wants a sports analogy, it would be rugby, right? And all my kids play rugby, right? But if you look at it, they're respectful of the referee. They get sent to the sin bin and apologize. I mean, my daughter, number 2 kid, number 1 daughter, they both played rugby, but I mean, she was on varsity national champion and whatever. They would be doing their mascara and their hair, and then they go out in the field and rip each other's faces off. And then they form this arch where they run through, and then they all go to the bar drinking, right? So, they hit hard, but hug hard,
Right.
and I said, that's a good way to live. Leadership has always been top down, inside out. If you're a good leader, put together good people, magic happens.
Robert, thanks for joining me in this conversation for our Workplace Culture Wisdom series. I've really appreciated your insights and the wisdom that you've had to offer.
Well, my pleasure.
Go to worldviewprograms.com to learn more about our Healthy Workplace Culture Program options.